Welcome to CJ's Real Southern Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Johnson, fly fishing guide, storyteller, and Southern soul through and through. From the front porch to the riverbanks, this podcast is going to be about connection, friends, and maybe learning a trick or two about trophy fishing. So grab a sweet tea, tie on your favorite fly, and let's go fishing. And joining us today is going to be Morgan Gus from Diamond State Fly Shop for our fishing report and what to do in the month of April in the Ozarks. How we doing, Mr. Morgan?
Good. Weather's getting better.
Oh, man. Dude, we had a few
days are getting longer.
There that were... We had a few days that were crazy there for us Arkansas folks. We're not used to no 10 below wind chill.
No.
So, yeah, I'm glad the weather's changing.
Yeah, those days are behind us.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so what's going on this month?
April on the river, I start seeing bugs. Usually early April is when I'm starting to play with a lot of my caddis nymphs. Doing a lot of that. Can still see a shad kill here and there, but not likely. That's kind of been and gone
by then.
Kind of getting that way from our minnow stuff and really starting to focus on bugs.
Yeah.
So caddis are coming out early April.
The funny thing, one of the funny things about those April caddis is, when I first got here, I mean, we didn't have near the hatch that we have now, obviously.
Right.
But when we did, when it started, I could set my calendar on March 15th.
Yeah.
And they're a little later now.
They are a little later.
Yeah.
It's early April is when I'm kind of starting to go to my nymph patterns, right?
That's right.
We're not really seeing prolific hatches in the early parts of April. Kind of start seeing that later part of April, getting some of those better hatches. But, it was last year or the year before, we just had one of those spring days where I'm like, it was fishing a little tougher, closer to March.
Sure.
And that's when I kind of I was like, man, I need to switch to caddis stuff. And we just wore them out. But not a caddis in the air, but just getting that mindset. I think those fish are starting to see those bugs become more active. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely consider, all up and down the river, starting to transition to get a little bit more buggy. And that's really, April. That's where we're going to see a lot of hang out into that evening part of the day, and might catch a hatch here and there, and it's fun. Hopefully we get some dry fly fishing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and just as the years have rolled on, man, our hatches are just more prolific, and they just, as our river ages, they just seem to get better and better, and add in the sulfur hatch. We'll talk about that here in a couple months.
Yeah,
but that's coming. But just all of our hatches in general are just really coming into their own.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, all across the board in the Ozarks, we're going to start seeing fish become more active as they're warming up, the insect life as well. So with the caddis on the rivers, all your bass species up on the lake, your black bass species up on the lake, they're going to start transitioning shallow, getting ready for spawning and stuff like that. So getting out on the lake is really fun.
Right.
During
that
April, if you need to
take a great time to catch them.
Yeah. If you need to take a break from catching trout, which that's
everybody
up to you.
should.
I love going up on the lake and fishing brush piles, submerged brush piles.
Yes.
As those fish are starting to make that transition.
And I love black bass fishing. I mean, I love it. But I'll be honest, I haven't done as much on these lakes. They're very intimidating to me. I come from my world in Mississippi, a 40-acre lake was a really nice lake, you know.
Yeah, no, these are big.
And I had to figure them out. Now you walk out here and we got 1,300 miles of shoreline, and I go, holy crap, where do I put my 4-inch fly?
Right.
Yeah. So it can be a little intimidating, although I know if you put in the time and you know where to go and what to do, it can also be very rewarding. We have some amazing bass on our lake.
Yeah, and this is the time of the year where it starts to that window starts to narrow as they're moving up closer to shore and getting ready for that spawn.
Yeah. Much more accessible to us.
And, I think as a fly angler, you get more target fishing. So, I mean, I fish it conventionally up on the lake as well. But I've taken a lot of that conventional. April is when I really start to throw like little flukes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of just, I'm like, why can't I do this on a fly rod?
Sure.
Slower sinking line.
Yeah, you're not getting deep anyway,
No,
so
you
why
don't have
can't
to.
it be
You
done
just,
on a fly rod? Right.
you can run them on like something like your Sluggo, running that on like a S3, S5 triple density line and just working it over the top of brush piles is so
Deadly.
fun.
Yeah,
It's so fun. 'Cause, I mean, that fly just walks so good. Just kind of like, so very similar to that fluke.
Yes.
And I was like, we can do this on fly, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. That's kind of funny you said that because most people think of you mentioned the Sluggo, they think of that as a trout fly. But I actually designed that as a bass fly because I wanted to get action in dead water.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it with my deceivers and my other bugs. I could get an up and down action, but I couldn't really get that swimming action.
Yeah.
And so that's actually where it designed. I actually had a friend call me and go, Chad, man, I'm killing it on that buck. And I was like, oh, yeah, where are you bass fishing? And he goes, bass fishing? I'm catching trout on it. And I was like, you are? Oh, heck, I'll have to try it.
Yeah. No, it's a great,
Yeah,
as designed, it's a great bass bug. And
it's a good stillwater bug.
Yeah.
But, okay, so do you start seeing some, is it time for the white bass and all to start running up creeks and staging yet, or is that going to be a little later? Or?
It really depends on where we get with water temps on that lake.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm. Maybe closer to May before we start seeing those.
Like I said, it depends. I think this year with the colder, we're still seeing pretty low lake levels or low lake temperatures. Mm-hmm. So it might be a little longer.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
But definitely like keep an eye on it. And those, I tend to see it more as we start to get into the spawning shad.
Yeah, okay.
And chasing shad around. So I would predict, I mean, it's not to say that it won't happen, but I tend to see it closer to May.
Okay.
Into May.
And if guys contact you here at the shop, do you have contacts on the lake?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that, here and Beaver Lake as well. We have contacts all over.
So that's with
so
Diamond State. If you're looking at doing the black bass fishing, I actually don't offer that. I don't have guide program on the lake, so Mr. Morgan could take care of you on that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Reach out to us. It's not something that we necessarily promote a lot.
Right. But you have access.
But we do have access to it.
You have anything going on through the shop this month you want to tell us about, or?
Not really much going on in the shop.
Okay.
We're just pretty busy here.
Okay.
As it's busy time of month, so
yeah, that's
we
right.
got between me and Logan, we're both out running
Yeah.
around guiding,
Yeah.
trying to run the shop, and it's busy.
It's
so
busy.
we're kind of taking, April, May, we kind of chill
Buckling
out.
down. Yeah.
Chill out on
Buckling
doing
down,
like many events in the shop or anything like that.
Yeah. Save that for the slower time.
Yeah,
Plenty of people coming in right now.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So but we're always here.
Yeah.
We're always casting in the yard or tying. So
Sure.
anybody's welcome to stop in and hang out. And
Yeah, guys, they have a great little gig here. You can overlook Cotter. It's a beautiful place. Come in if you're of age, have a beer with the boys, whatever. But, all right, Morgan, thanks for talking to us this week. Looking forward to hearing you on next month's episode. I know May kicks off a lot of cool things. So, all right, it sounds like this month we're looking at brown trout on dries and black bass on the lakes, guys. And if you guys want to do any smallmouth fishing or any brown trout or rainbow fishing, don't forget, just call my service, CJ's White River Outfitters. I also have CJ's Crooked Hideaway, which is a rental property, a beautiful cabin on a bluff over Crooked Creek that I can put you guys up, has 8 beds. And so... all right, until next month, guys. And I want to introduce Chris Willen. He is a musky guide from up north. He's been down and fished with me quite a bit, become good friends over the years, and he's got a lot of good stuff to talk to us about. How are you doing, Mr. Chris?
I'm doing really well, man. It's good to talk to you, brother.
Yeah, no, long time no see. We miss you guys down here. I know everybody's busy these days. So, Chris, what do you do up in the Northwoods? Give us a little bit about what you have going on.
Oh, right now we got a lot of snow shoveling going on, buddy. But come into May here, we'll have musky season opens up. We got as you know, you've been up here doing a little fishing, smallmouth fishing in the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Um, our smallmouth bass regulation changed a few years ago, and we have an open season year round now. So once the weather breaks and all that stuff uh goes, we can start bass fishing as soon as they're back. And I think you probably are super well aware of this, maybe some listeners aren't, that our Midwest smallmouths migrate a lot. So our fish aren't really in the river right now. They drop out of the river and go to the flowages, which are we call flowages up north. Everywhere else in the country would call it a reservoir.
Okay.
But
Okay. Yep.
for some reason up here we call them flowages.
Well, it's a good distinction between the two. People often ask me what they mean by flowage because they think of it because flowing, they think of it as just the river, but it's not. It's your reservoirs.
Yep, and a lot of them do have current through them. They're dammed up parts of the river. So there'll be sections of river a lot of times, or sections of river that had lots of lakes, like the Chippewa flowage. The big famous flowage in our neighborhood here was seven lakes that the river connected, and then they flooded it to make it one big continuous flowage or reservoir of usage.
And that would have just multiple small dams on it.
It would have two dams, or well, depending, they have different forks that come in,
Mm-hmm.
but essentially, you'd have one dam at the end that kind of flooded and held up everything, and then something that generated power usually also.
Okay. So the rivers that you would be smallmouth fishing on, are these the same rivers that you would be targeting muskie, or is that kind of two different places?
Yeah, a lot of our rivers up here have both. So we do a lot of the uh same rivers, but there's also, like, you know how it is. This river is a little bit better for that. This river is a little bit better for that. This section's a little better for that this time of year. With the migration of smallmouth, they leave in the fall and they come back in the spring. And so, that comes into play too, wherever they're going to be at in the river. So even though when the ice goes out and everything looks cool, we got a lot of water and it looks like you could go float down the river and have some fun. There's actually not a
No
lot
fish
of
in the river. It's more like a salmon run. I mean, you've got them in at a specific time and they're gone at a specific time.
yeah, and they're there most of all the summer.
Would that mean, like you mentioned, I'm just playing in my head here, that you mentioned there was a couple of flowages, I mean, dams, and they move in and out. And then you said some will fish different than others. I would imagine that lower end would have to be more smallmouth fishable water because they obviously can't get past the dams, right?
They can't get past the dams, that's right. But sometimes they run up, they'll run as far as, to the dam, and depending on where you're at, that could be many, many miles. Some of the stuff in western Wisconsin is, the border and stuff like that. They go for many, many miles.
Yeah, I know when I was up with you that, I mean, we had phenomenal bycatch. I caught nice walleye, I caught nice smallmouth while we were musky fishing.
Right. And that was because you were around in the early fall. So those walleyes are eating a little bit bigger stuff. The smallmouth are eating bigger stuff as they start to drop out, and then you can run into some really big smallmouths. Musky fishing late season, the big flies tend to bring them out. You see on the conventional tackle side of things, a lot of the big bass guys using those big swim baits and glide baits and whatnot. And
Absolutely. They look like musky baits, right?
sure, and so that's kind of what these big musky flies are to these bigger smallmouths. And our big smallmouths, depending, we're not we're not getting anything much over 6 pounds ever. Maybe one a year that big if you're lucky.
Yeah, but a 5 pound smallmouth in a river is, well, I mean, let's be honest, that's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's much more realistic.
Right. A 5 pounder, not the 3 pounders people are calling 5 pounders, right? Like
Right.
a true 5 pound smallmouth is a beast. I mean, we get nothing like that down here. If we get a 3 pounder, we freaking rocked it, right? That's a amazing Ozark smallmouth. But for you guys, I mean, to get that 20-inch 4 pound or that 22-inch 5 pound, I mean, not that it happens every day, but it is very doable for you guys.
Yeah, I don't do as many smallmouth trips as I'd like to do just because I'm so musky based.
Sure.
So, we do a lot of the pre-spawn stuff before musky season is open. But my biggest smallmouth this year was during the summer on a smallmouth trip, and it was just what was it, 22 and something? And it was ginormous. It jumped a couple times, and I was just like, "Oh no, that thing's huge."
Yeah. When they show themselves before we get them in the boat, it's kind of freak out time, right? That's the holy crap, look what's on the end of my line kind of deal.
Well, when they're smallies and they don't get their total tail out of the water, they just kind of get part of their body out of the water. You're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's the action of a largemouth, right? Where these big sows try to jump up and they can't even get out of the water. That's freaking amazing. So you talked a little bit. You said, they would go after the big musky flies. And before I jump into the fly gig, just real quick, so we talked a little bit about your smallmouth. I know that's your pre-spawn, that's your early season. But once you get into muskies, what are you doing? What's your game?
So muskies last for us. So Wisconsin is broke into two zones, and I'm in the northern zone. So our zone doesn't open till the last Saturday in May and Memorial Day weekend. And it's real hit or miss depending on what's going on. Sometimes they're biting real small stuff. Sometimes they're biting, quote unquote, normal size musky stuff. Sometimes they're not around,
Right.
which
Sometimes,
is,
well, I mean, we know. I mean, anybody that spent any time musky fishing knows that, like, that is the hunt. I mean, where we'll tell guys down here, like, our big 2-footers, oh, it's just like a musky hunt. Like, you got to put in your time and all. But it's really not like a musky hunt. I mean, that you guys really grind it out. Like, y'all have to go work for those fish. But then when you get them, it makes it all that much better, which I would assume takes a special customer and to want to put in that kind of time for a fish. But, like, it's so gratifying when you do.
yeah, it's just especially with a fly, it takes time. It takes time to get a really big one. You can go out and catch them just like you can go out and catch browns, right?
Right. We're going to go catch some 20-inchers.
Yeah. But like to go out and get the muskie that you're looking for, the one, it's an insane amount of work. And it's a blast, man. I mean, I don't know. I've been doing it for a long time, and there's still nothing I like more. I'm lucky to get to do a lot of different stuff. And at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, there's not much else I'd rather do than go chase the muskies, whether it be with a fly or with a lure or what have you.
Right. Just that bigger, not just bigger, but the more challenging fishing seems to be, like you say, just a little more gratifying. I know, in all of my predator hunting, when I came up there with you guys, I was there for a week. I had 2 eats, and I'll never forget them. Like,
That's right.
which is I've caught a lot. I've been very fortunate, got to go to some really cool places, got to catch some really big fish. But the way those fish eat, and as hard as it is to catch them, when you actually get that bite, like one of them, I got taken to a little kiddie pool because I had not caught one yet. And I got taken to a kiddie pool, and I literally done a figure 8 in 2 foot of water, wade fishing, and he ate at my feet. That's ridiculous. And the other one that I had, I remember, I think I was with you. We were coming through a very, very skinny shoal, couple foot deep at best. I get close to the boat. My fly gets hung on a rock, and I look down, and there's a muskie sitting right beside my fly.
Oh yeah,
And
dude.
evidently he had followed it out, and it was hung on the rock. So when I pushed towards the bank to get the fly off of the rock, and when it snapped off of that rock with that acceleration, he ate it. And it all happened so quick that I just totally muffed up the hook set. And, no way was I expecting that fish in that kind of water. And so, but literally burned in my memory. I'll never forget the way he looked at me before he freaking took off to the left to the fly. Like, it just the whole thing, So it is. It's a different bite. It's a different type of fishing. It's a different reward.
Yeah, and just, something about the environment where they live. And if you're talking river fishing, I've pivoted a little bit and done a little bit more out on the bigger bodies of water with water level changes and stuff, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But just talking about river fishing and a fly and that stuff, and just seeing a fish that's 25 to 30 pounds coming out of a spot in water that you could walk easily from bank to bank, and it's just like, sometimes to me, it just, and after seeing it so many times too, so I mean, don't get it skewed, but sometimes it's just like, what are you doing here? You don't look like you belong in this little body of water.
Yeah, right. Just a giant in this little bitty flowage.
And it's cool, man. And like, to your point, I don't remember every smallmouth I've caught. I don't remember every redfish. I don't remember every trout. But if I think hard enough, you can remember most of those muskies or most of those people's muskies, and just seeing all that stuff and how it unfolds. And it's just a different thing. And for us up here, it's just a regional thing. It's just our big top of the line thing. And some people don't dig it. Some people would rather go smallmouth fishing or walleye fishing or whatnot. But the guys that musky fish generally musky fish, and that's what they do.
Yeah, they're diehards. I mean, we were talking about it in my boat yesterday, just how, there's no other thing in our lives that we give this kind of time to receive so little back from it. Right? Like,
That's the truth.
We have devoted our lives, and in saying we get so little back from it, I mean, just like you, I've met most of my friends in fishing. Some of my closest friends are from fishing, and it's this predator hunting mentality that has brought us close together and give us this kinship. So, like, it does bring you more than just the fish you catch. It
Absolutely.
is very rewarding, but we put in a lot of time for a little payback.
Oh yeah, if we put in half the effort fishing that into something that actually had monetary return, we would all be doing a little bit better.
We'd all be rich by now instead of living out of our trailers. Yeah, but it's a give and take, right? Like, that's that whole, like, we only get one shot at life. This is what we've chosen to do with it. I mean, it's crazy. Some people say we're just beating our heads against the wall, but some of my best memories have been made in a boat.
Absolutely.
Hunting predators, the grind, the hunt together, the taking very little data and trying to put that together and make something out of it where we can target them better. Like, the whole process is just different than all of the other fishing that I do.
Oh yeah, and it's a mindset. The guys that really love it. And pretty funny story. Not this past season, but the season before, I've had a group of guys that have been coming for a long time, and we had the worst week of guiding that I've ever had in 15 plus years of this. And it was awful. I mean, the fishing was not happening, couple boats going every day, and just, that's how it went. And me, I don't really tend to have too many alcoholic beverages. And we got done at the end of the trip, and we all went out to dinner that night, and I ordered a cocktail, and everyone, these guys know me, and they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, boys, I'm going to need one after this. Like,
Yeah, that was a rough one.
That was the worst week of guiding that I've ever seen. And they were like, that's the worst you've ever seen. That was it. We were the worst. And I was like, yeah, it had nothing to do with you guys. The fish just weren't biting. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was just terrible. And all they did was rejoice. they were like, good, yeah, it's us. We were the ones. Like,
Yeah,
we had the
love the
shittiest trip.
grind.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they were like, all right, well, we're gonna add a boat for next year, and we're gonna, and they ended up not adding a boat. These guys ended up having to do a wedding. We just did 2 boats again, but they came out and we smoked them. We got some big fish and we had a great trip. And I actually caught a giant one with them, fishing a little bit with them, which
Awesome.
doesn't happen a lot, but it did happen that day. It ended up being my biggest Wisconsin fish of the whole season. And one of the guys got it on video of us netting it, and I just grabbed this dude and I'm hugging him and just grabbing him because it was just such a giant muskie, and they were all about it. And this dude catches giant tunas and all kinds of crazy stuff offshore, and he gets the muskie grind, and then a couple hours later, his buddy got one that was like right around 45 inches. That was a tank. So it was just a day, like you have the year before where we got our butts kicked just continuously day after day of, you name it, we had it. Bad weather, low water, yada yada, and they just didn't bite. And then the next year we get 2 really quality muskies in a day, and you're just like, that's it. You're paying those dues and you're getting tested, and then you show up again and the magic happens.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, if they were trophies, I mean, if we wouldn't catch them every day, if they're trophies, if these things are so hard to grind out. So, like, really, our customers in a manner, and they've got to understand this, like, you're somewhat buying a lottery ticket. The day you show up, the day you get there, is the water right? Is the sun out? Or do we have clouds? What are the conditions? Because I don't know about you up north, but for me, it's all about conditions, right? When I get the right conditions, we produce. When I don't get the right conditions, it's a grind. And so you've just got to keep putting in your time and keep buying your tickets so that you are there on that day where everything lines out and everything comes together and boom. But I related a lot to permit fishing. These guys have been going permit fishing for 10 years to get their permit. Guys, you're not going to come and catch a 30-incher just because you come and bought a ticket on the White River. You're not going to go catch a muskie just because you jumped in Chris's boat. Like, you kind of got to put in your time and go, well, but I know that I have a better chance with these guys and going out with these guys to get that fish, and so I'm just going to continue to put in my time. And so it really is. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
With muskies too, I mean, to your point of the lottery ticket, I think with the guided muskie fishing, you're getting an elevated ticket. It's just like, all right, especially for a big muskie, like a really big one. It's like, okay, I've seen this fish before. I know where this one is. This is the right time that I can, to the best of my ability, I'm going to put you there at the time that and we're in a river float. As you know, our rivers aren't really set up that well for running around.
Right.
So you're in a drift boat a lot of times. So I may not be able to put you on that spot at sunrise or at sunset or at, XYZ, moonset, moonrise, moon underhead, moon overfoot, yada, yada, yada. I can just put you there to the best of the ability and be like, okay, this is how she sets up. This is where she's going to be. And that's kind of the stuff that I like to teach people these days. Like, wherever you're fishing, whatever you're doing, like, you can figure it out. You can be like, okay, so why is that fish there? And then, you can talk about it. I'm kind of famous now for being like the guy that drops the anchor and pulls over and explains what happened. Like, okay, let's talk about this for a second,
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And by famous, I mean, they're probably annoyed of me by it.
Right.
but I'm like, listen, hang on. Let's talk about what just happened. Like, okay, why was it sitting there? What was it doing? Why does it live there right now? And is it just a happenstance type of thing? Or is it like, okay, we've got deep water adjacent, or if it's springtime, is there spawning ground adjacent? Is there this? Is there that? What's correlating to making that fish? It's not just, most of the time, there's a simple explanation, but there is an explanation. There is a reason. It's not just there out of happenstance most of the time.
Yes, Dave Whitlock used to give me info, and he would tell me something, and I'd come back to him after trying it and go, okay, so it's really good that I know it works, but I want to know why it works. because if I know why it works, I can replicate it somewhere else. But if I don't understand
exactly
the
right.
why, then I can't replicate it. And so I think what you're doing is great. Don't worry about if they get annoyed with it. You are actually, that is a great thing to teach your customers, because they can then use that information when they go back home. You know, that's a very good teaching tool for your customers. I know that you have guided up there a lot. You have guided down in Tennessee quite a bit. Talk to me just a little bit about, like, what's the differences between the North and the South fishery that you fish? And I know you're not going down to Tennessee anymore. I just kind of like to know, like, what were the differences you've seen in the muskie from up north and down south?
Well, there's a lot of differences, but a couple of the things that stand out to me is being able to fish them pre-spawn down there, where we're not allowed to fish them pre-spawn in the north. So you see some really monster girths and big egg wagons, basically. And that's kind of cool. And how they behave, where they get on those feeds pre-spawn that are kind of interesting, and being able to figure that out, and having to figure that out just because I'd never been able to, we don't get to target them. So there was a learning curve there.
Yeah, it wasn't in your wheelhouse. It was a new venture for you, so to speak. What do they act like during that time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, just our fish up north, we don't, and it's not like this everywhere, but the fish that I fish for are a much more sucker-based diet fish, or in the lakes, they're perch crappie, rough fish based. And in the south, a lot of the fish are shad based. And that's a completely different approach
Mm-hmm.
than what we do up here. So that took a little bit of figuring out, and that was cool. And just the clarity of the water is a big difference too. I mean, just to break it down, probably to the simplest factor is in our water up here, it's a little bit more tannic stained, and you can't see in it quite as well. And a lot of the places I fished down south were very clear, so you would see the muskie activate to your fly or lure further away from the boat. You'd pick it up further away. And what I would learn is that, like, a lot of times these fish would follow it for a ways and then just break off, and they'd never even come near the boat. Where up north at home, I would never see that fish if it didn't come to the boat, because I can't see it out there.
Right.
So you would see a lot more activity and a lot more, maybe for lack of a better term, curiosity
Mm-hmm.
from the muskie, from them going down the river in a day.
Because back home, you're not seeing those looky-loos that are just coming out and checking it out. You're only seeing the ones that come in for the boat play.
Yeah, you'll see them, on a bright sunny day, low water, right conditions, you might see them, but not generally, no. And then what we would have up north, inversely to down south, I didn't see a lot of this down south, is we would have the wake and takes, where we're fishing shallow water and you cast a fly, and then all of a sudden, here comes this tidal wave from downstream or upstream that's coming towards your fly. And you don't have that as much down south, So that's a difference. But really the clarity, I mean, the tannic waters in our rivers, like, we very rarely in Wisconsin blow out. Like, it takes a lot, or a rather large water event or rain or whatever to have a blowout situation. And even if we do, we've got all these natural lakes to go and fish. So there's never really a blowout at all. If you book a trip, we're gonna fish somewhere. Tennessee blows out at the drop of a hat. And with that comes all these different levels of clarity of water, which never really was a factor up north. But when you fish down south, you're like, all right, we got super gin clear, we got the like blue clear, we got the green clear, we got the milky green, we got the yoo-hoo brown totally gone, we got the greeny brown that you can still kind of see your fly. Like, there's so many levels of what the water looks like.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Yeah,
we do.
exactly.
That's right.
And you figure out, like, hey, well, during this water clarity, you could really fool them because they can see it, but they can't see it too good.
Mm-hmm.
And you really, can whack them during those periods. Or like it's too dirty, and it's like unless you got a rattle bait or something that's making all kinds of noise, you don't have a chance. There's no chance. There's no way they're finding a fly, like zero.
Yep.
And then, when it's super gin clear, that's hard too.
Yeah, you might can move them
Just-
from further away, but they can see your fly better and they don't fall for it as easy. And they probably don't come to as much boat play.
No, or they just don't play the game at all, and you float past them, and you're like, well, there was a big one. You didn't even want to,
Like, look at
that
it.
was, yeah,
Yeah.
that was slightly anticlimactic.
We found him, boys, but yeah, he's not playing today.
And I've seen that with you guys down there on the white too, where you float over a brown and you're like, golly, that was a real one, but it didn't do anything. You're just seeing it.
Do nothing. Yeah, they lockjaw at times. We had a scenario just last week where we had our waterfall out and it got dirty, and that medium dirty, and we were throwing into the chocolate milk but pulling into that green milky water, and
I love
freaking crushed them. Like, got a 28 that day, got a 24 that day, like in dead low water. But that water clarity made it where they were eating our pushers and they were feeling them more so than seeing them, and they didn't question them as much. And so that predator water clarity thing is very real in all of our southern regions.
Totally. And then, it does translate to up north too. If we get super low and clear, that even our tannic water can get really clear, and you're seeing every contour of the river bottom, and the fly selection gets pretty small. And what I mean by that is a lot of the flies that you might throw just aren't going to work. They're just, either to this or to that, or not enough this or not enough that, whatever it is. And I'm not maybe going to be a little bit too secretive with that, but there's only a few things that I've found that work when it's like that. And that's it,
Yeah, the same way here. Like, when it gets like that, they're not eating. You're not going to get that big aggressive, for us, a big fly, 7-8 inches, a little smaller than your musky bugs. And you're just not going to get those fish to go on those bugs in that kind of water. And the same here. Like, you go to a different style bug for that scenario, and it works. And you can throw those big ones all day. A big thing for me that I find that I don't mind talking about is, I think there's a huge difference for us in a reaction bite versus a feeding bite. When the river's big and they're out and they're hunting and they're aggressive and they feel good, I'm going to be throwing big flies for big fish. But when that water drops out and they're not in that mood and they're not in that big predatory state, well, Dave Whitlock told me one time, he goes, Chad, I really like what you're doing. I don't want you to quit what you're doing. You're putting big fish in the boat. But I want you to remember something. He goes, it takes a special fish on a special day to eat that fly. And he goes, and you're finding them. He goes, but I want you to remember, every one of those fish will eat a 3-inch minnow. And that set on me super hard, right? I was like, he's right. And so I started thinking about, what am I catching the most of? I'm catching the most of these males, the most aggressive ones, right during the post-spawn, right? So it's when they've been fighting off all these other fish, when they have been aggressive to all these other brown trout that are trying to get on their beds, and yada, 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 that they get that aggression. And unless we go to that 7 or 8 inch fly, we're really not pissing them off, because for a 3-inch fly to be in their territory is not offensive for them. For a 7 or 8 inch fly to be in their territory, or fish to be in their territory, they'll run him off. And so I find that I get either a big fly aggression bite or a small fly feeding bite. If you look at our bait boys down here, they catch giants, and they're never fishing anything over a 3-inch minnow. And so
Right.
It's just that mentality for us as trophy hunters, and we know these big flies have put so many big fish in our boat, but it's not the answer every time.
Well, I think a lot with those bait guys too is their ability to keep that in their zone of awareness for so long.
Yes, we're always asking them to chase.
Oh yeah, well, you're getting it into their zone of awareness for you know, a snap of a finger, or maybe two snaps of a finger. They're able to keep that thing in a zone of awareness for maybe seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds, and 10 seconds. Or if it's just sitting there on the bottom,
Infinitely.
infinite
Yeah,
seconds.
that's right. Well, it's like I got a
So,
buddy that on his 21st birthday, his buddies asked him what he wanted to do, and these were bait guides. And he goes, man, I want to buy my first legal case of beer, and I want to go down and sit on that big fish we've been looking at all these months. And they go down and get him his case of beer, and they go down and park on this fish and put a sculpin in front of his face. And hour 3, the fish swam up and ate it. So, like, they literally just sit there with a bug a foot in front of his face for 3 hours, and this fish pulled up over the bait to feel for a line, and there was nothing, and he backed up, and he pulled back over it and felt for a line and backed up, and then 2 minutes later swam up and ate it. So, like, we never get that opportunity. We're never sitting with a fly. I mean, whether we're fishing a nymph, a streamer, a whatever, it's in and out of their zone quick. And so, really, when we're catching these fish on flies during the day, that is a huge feat. Like, these guys that are putting the big fish in the boat, they got to realize what they've done. You've taken a nocturnal fish and got him to feed during the day. Is really, it's crazy that we're able to do what we've been able to do, in my opinion.
pretty fun though.
Oh, dude, it's so much fun. And people either get it or they don't get it. All right, I'm going to move on. I got another question for you here. So let's geek out on flies a little bit. I'm not asking you to give up any secrets when to use what, but in your opinion, what makes a good musky fly? Because I'm a fly designer. I enjoy tying, but I tie for bass and trout and stripers and that type thing. And the musky world is just so different because y'all's flies are so enormous. So, like, I know it's a loaded question, but what makes a good musky fly? What triggers are you trying to hit?
I think the biggest thing with making a good musky fly, honestly, is castability. If you tie it to the point where it's uncastable, it's no longer anything that even deserves to be spoken about because you're not getting it anywhere it needs to be. So that's huge. And, what's funny about that, we just had the Bob and the Hood event and at Schultz Outfitters 2 weekend ago, whatever it was now.
Yep, great fly shop up north.
And I tied a bunch of flies. And a bunch of the guys there have been fishing with me for a long time. And one of the guys that works in the shop, Jesse, has caught a bunch of muskies up north with us, with me and Timmy and Lucky. And I ended up giving him, he tied me a bunch of bass flies. And I gave him the musky fly that I tied during my class. And he's like, every year your fly gets sparser and sparser. And I was like, yeah, because I'm getting older and older, bud. Like, I want to be able to throw it over there.
Right.
And, to talk about fly fishing, right? Why did we start fly fishing? It was to cast something that couldn't be casted anymore because it was so light.
Absolutely.
Some of the musky flies, you could throw them further than you could cast them, and it's sort of skewed, if that makes any sense,
Dang right. Some of these things you could throw on a spinning rod.
Yeah. And they're cool and they're awesome and they look great. That's cool. But I'm 38, bro. My arm hurts. I've been doing this for 15 years. Like, I can't.
Well, I think, too, you're not just older as in, hey, my arm, but, like, you're wiser. Like, when we were young, we were trying to come up with all of these things, we got in our heads. Like, I mean, it's very obvious with what we were seeing. The bigger, the better, right? I mean, that was the mentality we had early on. And then as we progressed and changed, we realized maybe we're coming down to what it actually takes, right? Like, I used to want to tie 9 and 10-inch flies, and I realized that on the White River, if I'm at 7 or 8, I'm just fine. I'm triggering the same fish. I'm getting the same reactions. That 7 to 8 inches is just perfect for us. And then I'm in the same boat you are. I have worked very hard at making my flies castable because I mean, just basically, if they're not, yeah, because we have to. I mean, especially here, I'm not in open water. I'm expecting these guys, when we get big water, I mean, we're casting under trees, we're
That's
casting
right.
around logs and rocks. We need to be able to make a good presentation, not just a delivery system where we clunk this big old wet sock out there that after an hour of fishing, we're tired.
That's right, man. And a lot of my guiding, especially river guiding, drift boat guiding, it is put the fly behind that rock, put the fly that swim it down that log, put it behind this particular spot in the rapid. Like there's specific spots that it needs to be to up your chances of your lottery ticket getting hit, And if you can't get it there, you can't get it there. And it just, the fish cannot be caught. And, I'm very lucky that I get to fish with Larry Dahlberg a lot. And he has a sort of a famous saying that says a fish does not care what it's caught on. Um, so it doesn't need to be the next super whistler thing. It needs to be the thing that can get there and be in its zone of awareness for those seconds of time. And those seconds of time need to be the maximum seconds amount of time that are allotted, whether if you're using a fly with an intermediate line to not get stuck on the bottom, then your allotment is shorter. If you're using a sinking line when you should be using a floating line, and your allotment gets shorter, because you're going to get stuck. And if you don't move it,
Absolutely.
or whatever it is, if you don't have it pieced together perfectly, things get exponentially harder. But so the fly stuff, man, it is a loaded question for sure. It's just I talk about AFF a lot with musky fly fishing, and it's sort of funny, and some people laugh pretty hard about it, but I call the AFF the anti-fatigue factor. So I want a nice easy cast and rod. I want a nice easy cast and line. I don't want you lacerating down the river. I want you to just cast it nice and easy for me, because we're going to be doing it. I guarantee you, I promise you that you'll get to do it again. You will get to make another cast. So if it
Yeah.
doesn't get to go exactly where you want it to go, we got hundreds more from A to B in a day. So it's just like nice and chill and nice and easy. And, same thing with brown trout, same thing with muskies. Anytime you're throwing big flies or chasing down the top dog, they could bite it in the last spot of the day just as well as they could bite it in the first spot of the day.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you're just a whipped dog at the end of the day and cannot move your arm, but I got this log right above the takeout, man. I got this log, and I'm telling you, there's a donkey sitting on that log, dude, and you better be able to put it next to it when we get there. And,
And it's at the end of the day. Like I had Michael Schmidt wear his Fitbit watch on my boat one day, and it was on his left arm, and he said, "Dang, that's weird. It counted me in your boat today, but it normally don't count me in the car." And I was like, no, Michael, that counted your strips. And he had over 15,000 strips for the day.
yeah, I believe it.
That's, so we've got to come to these trips prepared. I have a buddy that come down, and Max Waldrop, and he'd fish with me during the streamer season, and he'd go, "All right, Chad, man, I need a break." And I'd go, "Oh, no, dude, you can't get a break. We don't know when a bite window's going to open up. We got to fish." And we get down into Brazil, and he goes to Brazil peacock bass fishing with me, and I get into that like day 4, and I'm taping fingers and freaking hurting, and I go, "Hey, dude, these guys keep trying to give us a siesta. Why don't we take a little break in the middle of the day today?" And Max goes, "Oh, no, Chad, we don't know when a bite window's going to open up. You got to get up and cast." And I was like, "Dude, if you give me a break down here, when you come back to Arkansas and fish with me, I'll give you a break." And he was like, "All right, dude, pull this boat over. Give this boy a break."
He got you.
The fatigue factor is real, right? I mean, I'm always rowing. I don't ever get to fish. I don't get to cast for a week solid. So, like, even with, me casting pretty proficiently, like, I was wore out after day 4, And so, like, you really got to come to these things prepared for the hunt that it is if you want to have any kind of success at all.
It's big work most of the time, and it doesn't come easy. But sometimes you get guys that come up for 4 days, and in the first spot of the first day, they get a big one, and that's the way she goes. Or It happens day 2, day 3, but it's just, dude, it's a lot of casting most of the time, and it's just a big risk, big reward.
Yeah. Okay. This is something I have people ask me a lot. So, what do you think the number one thing you see your customer doing wrong out of your boat that you would like to see customers come with a mentality where they change that? Like, what's the one thing that people do wrong that they could go, okay, before I go with Chris, I need to do this. This is what he told me to prepare for. This is what he told me to practice. This is what would that be for you?
Making sure you can cast at least 50 feet, with your musky setup or something close to it. I mean, at least, right?
Yes.
And that hook set, man, is the biggest disconnect, honestly. Musky fly fishing, there is such a small window for error for the hook set. It is like unlike any other hook set that I've experienced in fly fishing. And if you do it wrong, it mostly doesn't work out. So,
Right. And that would be like one of the things that was surprising to me when we were up there is like these fish are giant and you don't give them an inch.
no.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You've got a fish coming to the boat. Walk me through it. What would you like to see your customer do?
Well, just depending on when they eat it, you are in the right position. Your rod's pointed at the fly. There's no off to the side whatsoever.
Right. All straight strip or they'll get caught to the side with their rod and they'll miss their hook set, correct?
Yep. And it just seems like any sort of rod manipulation on the hook set is bad. I've just seen it over and over and over again. It just doesn't work out. You need to hit them 2, 3, 4 times with a straight rod pointed right at them. And when you get to that hook set where you're pulling and like you feel like nothing's happening, that's when you can hook them. The fly line stretches a bunch. There's no getting away from it. And these fish's mouths are hard. And I pretty much use one hook. I use the same hook, and then sometimes if I'm downsizing a little bit, I use a double hook platform a lot. It's just 5/0 Gamakatsu spinner baits. Um, Spinner bait hooks for bass fishing. They're the right diameter. They're super duper sharp, and I can resharpen them with a file, which is huge for my program. We have a lot of rocky rivers, so if you've been in my boat before, you know that little file with the wooden handle is sitting right next to me in the rower seat all day long. And anytime you come tight on something or touch something or nick something or yada, 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 let me see your fly. Let me see your fly. Let me see your fly. They got to be razors. They got to be.
Yes, I'm the same way. Super anal on sharp hooks.
Oh, have to be. That is your number one thing.
And knots.
Knots are
And
key.
knots. People so negate their knots. When you're hunting these big predators, you do not want to lose the fish of your life because you didn't take 5 minutes to re-rig.
Yep. They're not like saltwater fish. They're not like, bass or even browns. They're not running once you hook them. They don't run away. They shake their head at you. They run at you. On the eat, a lot of times they eat it on a glide where they're gliding towards you, and all of a sudden you don't even feel like you're stripping anything. And you strip 3, 4 times, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, tight, 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 and then it's on. Or
Yeah, so if you feel the weight of that fly leave, you need to start stripping like a madman.
yeah, and that's a late fall thing. That's a cold water, like that's generally when that happens. They're heartbreakers because if you're not used to it, you kind of stutter step it a little bit, and you're like, what was that? What was that? And they spit it out, But they do it all sorts of ways, Chad, and they're just so frustrating sometimes on how they eat it because they bite it at the worst possible times. I had someone in my boat this fall, went to hand them a water bottle. They'd made 100,000 casts over the last couple days. Hand them a drink, and right as I hand them a water, Musky eats the fly right next to the boat.
Oh, God.
That happens all the time.
All the time. I had a scenario up there once where I threw in under a culvert, one of the dams, giant muskie. Just, there was no push, there was no nothing. He was just there, sitting with my fly in his mouth. Just like all of a sudden. I throw up in there, make a couple of strips, look out, giant muskie. He's eating my fly, and he's just sitting there. And, I mean, I consider myself to have a pretty decent strip set, and done a lot of saltwater fishing, that kind of stuff. And then we strip set on our brown trout. And I make what I think is a giant strip set. And the reality was I never moved the fly in his mouth. Like, he was literally just sitting there holding it. My strip set done nothing to pull it into his jaws. And then he just opened his mouth and coughed me out.
Oh, yeah.
You know, after a giant strip set. And so, like, you really got to drive that home. And a lot of y'all's flies have so much material on them that they can hold on to them really good.
They used to.
And so, like, yeah, so you got to really put some pressure on those fish. And we're never really getting the pressure we think with a fly line. Before I went to Brazil, I took all my guys that went with me, and I was like, guys, I want y'all to have a really mean strip set. I said, and I put together a little thing where we tied a bunch of bugs, and we done some practice and all. And I put a scale on a tree and told them to strip set me 5 pounds of pressure. It is amazing what it takes to put 5 pounds of pressure on that fly. It is a harder strip set than you've ever done just to put 5 pounds of pressure on it. So with that line stretch and everything we're getting, we really are like driving that hook home. I see why you say that that's like one of the big things for you is like it is a crazy hook set.
I give everybody the spiel when we get in the boat in the morning, and I just tell everybody, like, hey, pardon my soapbox, but I just want to reiterate one thing to you guys really quickly. And it's the strip set every time. And I show them what I don't want them to do, and then I show them what I want them to do. And a lot of people still do what I don't want. You know, they get that little bit of a side sweep or a little bit of a everything. And so I just tell everybody that's right-handed, everything's done with your left hand. Your right hand is doing nothing but pointing. That's it. If you move it at all, imagine you're sticking your pointer finger out on your right hand and you're shooting. If you move the gun to the right, you're going to miss the fish. If you move the gun to the left, you're going to miss the fish. If you move it up, you move it down, you're going to miss the fish. And you're pulling the trigger with your left hand. And you got to keep pulling the trigger and keep pointing the gun at the fish. Bam, 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 bam. And if you don't get them 3 or 4 times, you're not getting them, you know?
Yeah, that's a great way to wrap your head around that. That's good.
I could tell you a story about my favorite musky fly that I've ever caught. And I was going down the river with Schulte and a friend of his named Chris also. And they came up a day early for a 4-day group trip with the fly shop. And I had a day off and was talking to Schultz, and he's like, well, dude, me and Chris will come up a day early and we could fish, and you could fish too. And I was like, say less. I haven't fished in 2 weeks. Like, let's go, you know, because I had just been rowing so much. You know how that goes.
Oh yeah. I mean, we never get to fish the good seasons.
Right. So I had a gap day in October, which just, you know, I usually guide 31 days. And anyway, we're about a quarter of the way down the float, and his buddy Chris is a accomplished fly fisherman and has a drift boat and whatnot. And he's like, hey, I'll row for a bit. My arm's getting tired already. And we got 4 more days of this, you know, and he's a good stick, you know. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yep. So I get up and cast, and, you know, luck of the draw, I made like 3 casts.
Oh God. Yeah.
And all of a sudden my fly lands on the bank, sand bottom spots, high grass bank. I stripped the fly a couple times, and this wake just comes from downstream, and it's just blowing a wave towards my fly. And I'm like, oh, here it comes, you know? And I'm stripping, and all of a sudden it eats my fly and just goes into the middle of the river at 100 miles an hour. The line went through the water after it ate it. Like, it was badass. Like, I've seen saltwater fish do that, but I've only seen muskies do it a couple times where it makes that cutting noise, you know?
Yeah. They're actually running, not just sitting there bulldogging you.
Right. And this thing just ate it and took off. And I had to strip. I couldn't even tell you how many times. I guarantee it was pushing a dozen times before I actually caught up to that fish and stuck it. And it was in the middle of the river by then. And when I finally came tight to it and bam, I remember the strip and exactly how it felt because it just went. I was doing these massive strips of all the line I could get. And all of a sudden I did one and it just went halfway. And it was like, got him, you know? And that fish immediately shot straight up out of the water and did a backflip. And Schultz was in the back and he was just like, holy crap, man.
So you said something that I wanted to touch on. One thing was, just so these guys know, so I know you like that big straight strip, but y'all catch a huge percentage of y'all's fish under the boat.
Oh, yeah, right at the boat in the figure eight.
What does that hook set look like?
It's tough. It's
I
reading
feel
them.
like this is where a lot of people lose them.
You got to read the eat. You got to see if it eats it going from left to right, or if it eats it going from right to left, or if it sometimes, and if you're in deep enough water, they'll come straight up and eat it. And a lot of times that's tricky. So it's so situational. You can't really specifically say how to set the hook on a figure eight muskie and have it be a blanket statement.
Well, am I going to continue to sweep the way that he ate it?
No, you want to go towards its tail. You've got a short line out. Generally, you've got what I teach people is you're going to strip till you hear that first strip of your leader, and then you're going to kind of get to where you got 6 inches or so to your wire bite guard. So you've got 16 to 20 inches of line out of your rod tip only. And the reason for that is when you're doing your maneuvers, your 8, your oval, whatever it is, if you've got too much line out and you go to make the turn, your fly doesn't do anything during that turn. It just hangs there and then it catches up and then cuts a 90-degree turn to catch up with your line, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need that fly to follow those turns because of the way muskies prefer to eat things. They prefer to eat them sideways. They don't eat things directly from behind and swallow them. They eat things from the head and swallow them that way because of fins and spines and what have you, just like a snake would. They're not going to just engulf it from behind, right? So what you're doing with the figure eight is you're giving that fish opportunity here, 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 here in the turn, right? In that cross section, in those hanging turns. And a lot of times on that left hanging turn, on that right hanging turn, that's where that fish eats it because you're giving it that sideways shot. And it's like, here's my opportunity. Got to eat it or I'm going to starve.
You've got to show them the side of that fly.
And like very importantly in the river, especially, you got to your figure eight. I've seen this happen. This is a really good thing to remember. And Blaine preaches this. Larry preaches this. I talk about it a lot too because we've just seen it year after year. If you're coming in and your first turn of the figure eight is upstream, so many times that muskie kicks downstream and just takes off. Because think about it.
Okay.
If you're a sucker or a chub or whatever the heck you are that's food, are you going to evade uphill? No, you're going to run downhill. You're going to go as fast as away from them as you can possibly go. And I don't know what it is. It seems like simple math, and it's like a lot of those rules of angling where the simplest explanation is the explanation. The stuff that's scared's going downhill.
Yep. I like that. I would have never. That's an awesome perspective to think about that. That's cool that you keyed in on that.
So let's say you're coming in and that fish is behind your fly and you know it's behind it. So you're coming in and you're in the front of the drift boat now. So you're coming in and you're fishing river left. You're going to sweep to the right with that. You're going to keep stripping with the rod tip in the water, 6-8 inches, because I've also seen that's a huge disconnect with the figure eight. People will do a figure eight and the fly's sort of skating on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly can't remember a time where a fish came up and ate that.
Right. You want it to dive the way you're doing that figure eight. You're actually trying to get it to dive deep by the boat, right?
I want it coming in deep at the boat. And then as you're coming into that turn, imagine, okay, you're in the front, we're fishing river left, that fly's coming in. You're digging your rod tip down as it comes to the boat. As you're sweeping to the right, which is downstream, you're going to be keeping that depth. And then as you bend out, you're bent at your waist, your arms are fully extended in front of you. That rod is now pointing 9 feet away from the boat, right? 9 feet long. Then you start raising it up, not all the way to the surface, but just a direction change, right? Or a level change. So that fish is now pointing up, and it's pointing up away from the boat. It's not looking at the boat. It's not looking at you. It's not looking at your bright new puffy coat that's technicolored or
That's
whatever
right.
that, you know?
You're keeping it deep by the boat to keep their eyes down
That's
when
right.
they turn towards the boat. And then when they turn the other direction, you're happy to make that elevation change because they're looking away.
Because they're not seeing anything but river over there.
Dang right. Yeah. Very natural.
And then if it doesn't eat it there, I'm going to come back and I'm going to dig that rod tip back down, and I'm coming back in front of me deep. And now I'm turning on the left side, outside quick turn. I'm going to go quick on the upstream turn because I don't want it to be there. Right.
You don't want that upstream. You want the downstream. So you're just going to go up there just so that you can come back down.
That's right. And now I'm going to come back down through the cross deep again in front of me, and I'm going to hang it on the outside again, away 9 feet, waist bent, arms fully extended, rod is 9 feet plus my arms away from the boat, and bam, that's where I want that fish to eat it. The reason why my arms are fully extended and both my hands are on the rod, I have both hands in control of the line. Everything's out there, it eats it. Now I can set by coming towards my body with both my arms, with both hands on the line, both hands on the one hand above the reel, one hand below the reel, because most of your musky fly rods have an extended butt, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my hook set right there. Ugh, right there. Just my arms. Boom, boom. Got him right there. And then I've got two hands on the line so I can slip him some line if he's going away. If they eat away, you're going to pull on them pretty hard. If they eat at the boat, you're going to set it, and you kind of got to let them have a little bit then. You know, you can win depending on the size of the fish, but if you're talking about an upper echelon fish, that's not the best place for them to be.
No, you're going to have to give him a little bit. And so, like, dude, that was such a great explanation of what you're doing there. So, in saying that, like, you've got this giant fish, your freaking rod line's in your rod tip. You might give a giant some, but you're not giving most of them some. Like, tell me what that leader setup has to look like for that not to just explode on you.
Which I've had happen one time.
Okay.
And that happened this year, unfortunately, on a really big muskie in the flowage. We were in 16 feet of water. Fish ate it at the boat, went down. Dude held on, didn't give it any. And I'd never seen my 11 weight bent like that before. It was so bent. And before I could give any sort of explanation or anything, it popped. And so there is I'm coming into my 16th year, dude. I've only seen it happen once, you know? So that was a heartbreak. It was definitely over a 4-foot fish. I know that because after it popped the leader, it came up and showed itself to us. So you could see the feathers hanging out of its mouth, and it was a freaking whale. But I'm guessing that I'm using about a 12 plus, maybe we'll call it 12-inch bite guard.
Okay.
That's where it broke, was at where the wire meets the fluorocarbon, and it had to be loud and shocking to him right next to his head, right like that. And I'm guessing that's why he kind of floated up for a second, was a little bit,
yeah, disoriented. Yeah, what the heck just happened?
But your basic musky leader is a level 40-40 leader. You're using a 40-pound fluorocarbon with either, if you're using a welded loop to your fly line, I use a perfection loop. If you're not a welded loop guy, you can nail knot it or Albright it, whichever you so choose. And then you're going to go down to in the past, I would tell you that's never failed me is the Albright to the wire. And then you would perfection loop your fly to the wire. I'm not a snap guy. I don't really like snaps.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they are behooving to you in any way. You're switching flies too much if you need one, and musky fishing anyhow. And I don't like how they affect the action of the fly. I don't like how it looks. I'm not a fan. I like a real small perfection loop and real streamlined leader and keeping it real simple. the perfection loop is your weak point of the connection. The reason why I liked that was if I snag the bottom, that's what I can have be breaking, because 40-pound leader to break it is a lot.
A lot. You're liable to snap your fly line as quick as you snap.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
That's exactly right. And I didn't not interested in blowing out all my welded loops or pulling out all my nail knots. So that would be the breaking point. A stronger way to do it is to use like a uni knot. It's just a little bit stronger knot. You're just going to run the risk of blowing out your welded loop or pulling your nail knot. The reason why you're using fluorocarbon is because it sinks rather than floats like a mono. If you're using a intermediate line and you're running into really low water, you could, I suppose, switch to mono and maybe save yourself a little bit, but not really. I wouldn't suggest it. Most of the intermediates are 1.25 or thereabout inches per second, which is pretty slow. And the wire is, I only use one kind, and I've been using it forever. I've never had I never had a bite off or anything like that. And it's a 7x7 nylon coated tieable wire. I use the stuff from Scientific Anglers. It's 40-pound nylon coated tieable wire. It's called Predator wire. There's another brand, AFW, American Fishing Wire. Their stuff's called Surflon. Pretty much the same exact stuff. If you're a Rio guy, Rio makes it. If you're a Cortland guy, Cortland makes it. Everybody makes it. But that's what you want to be using. I personally like the SA stuff the best. It's very supple. It's very easy to tie. And, I've been using it since it came out a couple years ago and the year prior for testing, and it's been great. And it works, man. And we used to use fluorocarbon. I think maybe even when I met you, Chad, we were probably using fluorocarbon. We've known each other for so long.
Yeah, that's right.
But it doesn't make a lick of difference when it comes to them biting it. And in my personal opinion, and that's coming from northern Wisconsin to middle Tennessee and East Tennessee, where it's clear. Clear is what's coming out of your faucet. You're just saving yourself heartbreak. You're saving your fishery. You're saving everything. And for what, and honestly, if brass tacks comes down to, for me, I'm guiding. These people are coming from wherever they're coming from to come fish with me. And I can't have their fish of a lifetime or their one eat of a couple days of fishing or whatever it may be, their biggest one that they've ever caught, just bite them off on the hook set. That ain't happening ever again to me, ever. So I don't use fluorocarbon in anything anymore, to be honest with you. Even in my conventional tackle fishing, we used to use 130 and 150. And I've gotten bit off with that throwing big rubber baits. So I guarantee you're not fly fishing with 150-pound fluorocarbon.
No.
You're fly fishing with 80 or 100, and you're still getting bit off. And some people would preach that you could use as low as 60-pound fluorocarbon, and they wouldn't get it because it would go between their teeth, which is the most astronomical thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
So yeah, if you take anything away from my leader setup, it is 100% of the time there is never any reason to use anything but a wire that they can't bite through.
Yeah, I mean, they're such toothy critters. Why wouldn't you? I mean, heck, they're all like that. I mean, I was just catching barracuda down in Turks and Caicos, and I actually tied my fly on a 60-pound bite wire because anything less and you were just never going to get them in. Like, they'd jump twice and bite you off, and so I mean, it's pretty simple math. If they've got a lot of teeth in their head, use wire.
Once I hook a musky with a fly rod and I know I got it hooked, I'm not concerned anymore. You got them. It's not going to bite you off. Back in the day when we would use 80 or even 100-pound, it was always a concern that it was going to eventually saw you off, and you'd get it in the net and you'd look at your bite and you'd be like, geez, this thing was 1 or 2 runs away from not making it to the bag, and it's just...
Yeah, so there was still all this concern of whether you were going to get them in the boat or not.
Yeah, now I'm not interested in that anymore.
After you work for days for these guys.
Especially the really big ones, they're few and far between, and it's just, they're going to bite it regardless. It has absolutely nothing to do with the leader. If they're going to bite it, they're going to bite it.
That's right. I mean, I'm down here using I know this is not big musky line, but I mean, I'm fishing for trout and I'm using 12-pound Maxima green line. Those things at that point, when you're fishing that size bug, they aren't looking at your tippet.
Yeah.
You know, I got a lot of boys down here that are fishing 20, but I tend to stick that 12 Maxima green line's like a 15, and it's so abrasion resistant that I use that a lot. But so Chris, let's see, right here before we get done, talk to me a little bit. What would these guys need to do to get in your boat? What do you have going on these days? What do you have going on you want people to know about?
Well, to get in the boat, you can get me on Instagram, on Facebook, or just to my website, which is chriswillen.com, and you can find all my information on there. Musky dates I have available are spring and summer, early fall. If you want to look at late fall dates, you need to talk to me this year for 2026. And that's how the late fall season stuff is just going. I've been kind of like how we mentioned, I've been doing this for a little bit, and most of my late fall guys are repeat guys that I've been fishing with for, some of them as long as 12 plus years.
Sure.
So, as far as what else I got going on, I used to guide in Tennessee in the winter. This year I'm not doing that. And I've been working on a project here with Mr. Larry Dahlberg and the people over at Yeti Coolers, which has been super fun. We've done a few different things here, and we've got a few more things on the books. As close as just a couple weeks away here. So that's kind of what I'm doing this winter. It's kind of focusing on that project.
And will that be posted up? Will that, once you and Larry get that done, will that be posted up somewhere where people can find you?
Eventually it will be. I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about or whatever,
Okay.
but it's not Larry's specific project. It's a project with Yeti, and
Okay.
so when they ever deem to release it is when they do it.
Okay, so keep your eyes out open, guys. Chris and Larry have something coming out. We'll keep our eyes on that. When that comes out, we'll make sure and get you guys the information. So what about, you talked about your summer and fall musky fishing. Are you doing any bookings on early smallmouth trips?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so what time of the year and when would that be?
So it can kick off as early as the first part of May. Usually April can be a little bit hit or miss. We can get into them pretty good, but I've also had it where it's a little tough. And then once you get into May, it's usually full swing, and we're on those pre-spawn fish. It's my favorite time of year to chase them, man. It is so much fun. And self-servingly a little bit, I don't feel quite as guilty chasing the smallmouths when I'm not allowed to be chasing the muskies.
Yeah, right,
So,
right.
I always feel like if I'm smallmouth fishing during musky season, I'm selling myself short on maybe learning something that day. But the early season smallmouth pre-spawn, they are biting anything that you can get in front of them, pretty much. So whatever kind of streamer you want to throw at them, you can get bait on it. As it warms up a little bit, we start to get a little bit more action with some of the bigger deer hair frogs, Dahlberg divers, stuff like that. The popper bite can be good, like boogle bugs and stuff. You can get bit on that, but generally it's the bigger the better. It's really fun time of year to throw sinking tips or full intermediates, and feather game changers, Murdich minnows, big deceivers. Any of Russ's circus peanut variation stuff works super good. Schultzy stuff, the swinging D's, the leggy boys, anything big, 4 inches would be where you'd want to be. 4 or 5 inch for smallmouth fly is a pretty big smallmouth fly.
Sure.
And dude, they're smashing it.
Oh, dude, guys, I've been up there and done with this with Chris. If you're used to catching our southern smallmouth and you want to see some real smallmouth, go get in his boat, guys. It's a trip up there. It's a lot of fun. I know he talks a lot about musky fishing because that's where its heart's at, but make no mistake, if you're a smallmouth guy, you want to go get in his boat. Anyway, go ahead, Chris, finish up. I've been up there and done that with you, and it's so cool.
I think you're right. I do myself a little bit of a disservice because I'm so passionate about the muskies, but our smallmouth fishing is world class. And I always joke around, and it's just, for a guide, for me, it's a very more relaxed day because the net's getting wet all day. You're catching fish, you're laughing. The stress level of the anxiety of getting a bite is way down compared to going down the river and trying to make dreams come true with the muskies.
Yeah, because you got 100% better chance at having success.
Yeah. One of my favorite smallmouth fish stories up here is I had one of our Loomis dudes, Eric Linginger. He's a West Coast steelhead dude up here for a muskie trip all week, and we were muskie fishing, and it was muskie fishing. We caught some, but we also didn't catch some sometimes. And we got to the very last day, and we were on this one bank where the smallmouths really gather at that time of the year. And I had mentioned it, and he said, "Oh, well, do you have any smallmouth stuff in the boat?" And I was like, "Dude, we got 11 weights. I don't have anything to catch smallies. I don't even have any smallmouth specific flies." I'm like, "You could throw a musky fly and see if you could catch one." And then I was looking in my tray, and I had a yellow Gallup Sex Dungeon. And I was like, "Oh, you know what? Here." And I quick tied up a smaller leader and put it on that 11 weight, and he just yoked him down the whole bank. And he was like, "Dude, we could have been doing this the whole time."
Yeah, right. Why we've been on this grind? Like, these fish are awesome.
And it was just super funny to just, yeah, I suppose we could have been doing that the whole time.
Well, it's funny, when I come up to Wisconsin and we go over and we fish a couple of different places up there, the smallmouth really aren't on people's radar up there. Like, they just say they get in the way while I'm trying to catch my muskie or pike or walleye or and us guys are coming from down here going, "Oh my God, the size of those bass." So, like, it's just kind of a thing for you guys in the Northwoods. Those are very normal for you guys. Those have just always been there as bycatch for you guys. But now,
We fish for them for sure. I mean, we do target them, but it is, yeah, most of the time. I mean, when I'm musky fishing and they're blowing up our flies and stuff, it's just, or they're chasing, or they'll get a little bit like what your trout do. They'll hit it a few times because they're not getting that big hook,
mhm.
and you're like, "Oh, look at this guy, whack! Oh, look at him again, whack!" It's like, yeah, whatever.
Y'all smallmouth are our rainbows, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that's people get mad at me when I talk about it like that. But, like, I grew up in the South, so for me, a place like the White River, the rainbow trout are your brim and your perch, and the brown trout are your black bass. You can either go catch 30 rainbows for the day, or you can go catch 5 nice brown trout. Well, that's the way it is for me down south with my bass fishing. I can either go catch 30 perch and bluegill and goggle eye and that kind of thing, or I can go catch 5 or 6 nice bass. And so that's just kind of the way that is up there for you guys. That's just kind of the secondary fish, so to speak. But yeah, well worth.
And I do like them.
Yeah, dude, they eat so good, and they're so much fun, and they jump, and they eat our streamers, and they're such a great fish to target. So anyway, guys, if y'all get a free minute and y'all want to go up and do some smallmouth fishing or some musky fishing, get a hold of Chris at chriswillen.com. All right, guys. Chris, thanks for being with us today. We'll try to have you get back on for a second one down the road. And is there anything before we get done you want to tell the world?
No, man, just it was great to talk to you again, brother. It's been too long, and we got to get in the boat.
Yeah, we got to get in the boat. Okay, so right here before we go, I know he even half told me not to do it, but, like, dude, do you have one little short hairy carry for me?
I don't know if I can, man. I lost my voice totally in Michigan, but we could give you a hey. But that hurt.
Okay,
so.
Don't do it, dude. I'll bring you on again, and I'll make you do a full episode for us. But anyway, dude, I miss you, man. We'll get back in the boat soon, and I really do appreciate you visiting us at CJ's Real Southern Podcast. Guys, if you want to come down with me and you want to come visit the Ozarks, I have a cabin for rent on Crooked Creek. That's going to be CJ's Crooked Hideaway. I also have CJ's White River Outfitters as my guide service. You can look up either one of those on cjswhiterivoroutfitter.com. And yeah, we're booking up for the year. Hopefully Chris will get booked a few times on this gig. And we appreciate you guys listening to us. And we'll talk to you guys next month.